Have you ever stopped to think that there must be more to divination than just fortune telling? If you haven't, then listen to this video as I'm going to share with you some revolutionary perspectives. And if you have, I'm here to shine a light to maybe some of those intuitions that you've been having and some of the doubts that you've been having that's been holding you back from fully embracing divination in the magical way in which it was supposed to. And so I get it. We've been taught that we should fear the things that we don't know. And so to bring clarity through tools like divination and oracles, crystal balls, is going to lead us to understand the future. But what if this quest for uncertainty is what's actually holding us back? Instead of embracing chaos as a catalyst for growth, we've been taught to see chaos as an evil demiurge. And so many people have been turning to divination for spiritual bypassing, using it to predict outcomes instead of knowing thyself. And in today's video, I'm here to demystify, deprogram, and unravel the misconceptions that people have around divination. So I'm Leon Noble, and welcome to my channel where we decode, design, and divine in the spirit of know thyself and self-mastery. So for anyone that's new to my channel, I've been on a spiritual journey for about 20 years. And the last 4 years, I've got heavy into divination to the point where I've built the world's first Omni divination app. It's got over 16 different divination systems, all wrapped into one report, all wrapped up into one system, all integrated. And in going through that process, and I've done countless readings to know that divination works. So if you're looking for, again, a video that teaches you the science behind divination and why it works, then this video will cover some of it, but this is not a video to justify divination's existence. In my mind, it works. I see it every day. This channel's biased. If there's information that doesn't lead to a deeper understanding of self and knowing thyself, then that information becomes secondary. So when we're using divination as a tool, its primary function must be to aid and help cultivate the spirit. Otherwise, that tool becomes secondary and potentially redundant. But of course, knowing thyself is only half the story. The true transformation happens when you apply that knowledge and put it into practice. And so the story starts with me learning divination in the way it's most traditionally taught and just being uncomfortable with the path that it was leading me down, which was a path of trying to control everything in my life, which conversely led to less freedom. And so in this video, I'll share a couple of stories about how I navigated out of that into what I believe is a much more healthier balance. As I said, stay tuned, because if you've not heard this kind of information before, then this is potentially revolutionary. So let's dive in. So after a while, you reflect on the amount of readings that you've done. And me, I'm a syncretist. I'm into metaphysics. So after doing countless readings, I took a step back because I was starting to see a theme of people asking really similar questions. It's like the same questions just kept on being asked. And I was answering them in a way which gave them clarity on their future. This is what we're supposed to be doing, right? So will I get a job? Yes, no. Will my partner stay? Yes, no. Am I on the right path? Yes, no. And you would imagine a trajectory where the highest paid astrologers were the most accurate. So the client doesn't really care about the tool. You know, maybe they have more confidence and belief around certain tools that they've researched or that they believe to be true. But essentially, whether you're using runes, you're using oracle cards, pendulums, they just want to be confident that you are accurate. And so they'll go back to you if you show accuracy. So when I was doing readings, my key judgment was, of course, accuracy. And I would even keep a little score on how accurate I would. I'm really, really diligent with my work. I'm really studious and I really do care. So I would even, always do, let's say, customer service with my clients. How are they? How are the readings? How are you finding it, you know, after it sat with you for a while? And then I would make judgment scores. And, you know, my accuracy is really good, by the way. So that's not what this video is about. It was me, for example, asking, so how many readings have you had? Or have you had a reading before? And people are coming at those pivotal milestone moments in life. And what basically what basically was the seat of this uncomfortableness was that people, I felt, are using. And so what becomes the seat of my uncomfortableness after hindsight and reflection is that people are using divination as crutches. As I said, spiritual bypassing from doing the real deep inner work. So just to be clear, this divination program, this divination tool that I've built that, you know, I believe is pretty special, go check it out, is just one cog. You could at best say it's 10% of what my wider work is, which is spiritual life coaching. And I think the question in the back of my mind is, am I making it too easy for people? Am I allowing them to get answers which reinforce poor decision making? You might have someone, for example, that suffers from anxiety, that really has a fear of the future. And so anything that gives this person confidence, gives them a sense of peace, may seem like a real noble thing at first. And so for me, so as someone that really values the work that I do, I take a much more homeopathic perspective on things, which is, if my clients are getting better, I should be getting poorer. If my clients are becoming better, they should be seeking me out less. And so if I'm just giving them the same prescription every single time, take this drug, i.e. clarity, take this drug, i.e. clarity, take this drug, i.e. clarity, then I'm not really dealing with the symptoms. I'm only dealing with the sickness. And then it becomes like a control thing, like where they then see me as almost even more than a mentor, like a crutch. And so again, it's probably that I started off with spiritual life coaching and then got into divination that way round, after being in it for 20 years and just wanted to share some ideas and some thoughts and perspectives that I've been building on. And I've just dropped a video on how to transform chaos, or how to use chaos as a superpower. Check the link in the description. And essentially my personal journey is someone that's always embraced chaos. You could essentially just say I'm naturally a chaos being. I remember having a revelationary conversation for 3 hours with an astrologer who had been doing it, 10-15 years. And in that conversation, I was expressing my uneasiness, or just my lack of seeing the importance. Again, I'm completely tunnel vision on just knowing thyself, tapping into the oneness, for example. And so the way he put it was like, he gave me the classic weather forecast analogy. Well, wouldn't you want to know it's raining? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to obsess over it. Like, it's okay, but quite often I don't check the weather. I actually don't check the weather. I'll look at the clouds, a few seconds, and then I'll make my decision from there. Now, have I been left caught in a thunderstorm and the rain, unprepared? Yeah. But I trust more my divine timing and just me being in harmony intuitively, over obsessing over the details of knowing the future. So for me, the main argument of clarity, it just never ever held water, because I was like, there must be something deeper to it. Because, I'm looking at all the ancients, I'm looking at all the oracles, and clearly this is seen as something sacred, as a spiritual practice. And so even though I didn't get my answers from that person in that conversation, it opened my mind enough for me to go and look for my own answers. as a curious being. And so 4 years later, here we are, for me to do a first video that really goes into sharing this transformative way to use divination. So again, if you're new to my channel, I think it's always good for you to understand like ulterior motives. I always say if you're listening to someone, to understand their belief and understand their promise. So I just dropped an infinite design series, the first video in that playlist. Again, check it out here, where I talk about the importance of understanding where someone is trying to lead you, whether that's yourself or someone else, you know, or a partner, for example. And essentially this channel is about the basic Hermetic principle of the universe is mental. Everything is one. All is mind. And so when we look at it from that perspective, divination becomes a key tool in your psychology. And when I say psychology, I mean the old school original meaning, which is the study of the soul. And so the pioneer of psychology who really introduced divination into the Western mind is Carl Jung. And one of my favorite TV programs is Frasier. And it's about these two brothers, these two psychologist brothers, and a family. And without getting into the history too much, Frasier is Sigmund Freud, and his brother Niles is more Jungian. And so there's this fantastic episode where Frasier has two girls. He's not into females. He's not really good with women. This is one of the themes of the show. And so he has two women, and he's struggling to compete because they're both polar opposites, but he loves the qualities of this one and he loves the qualities of that one. If you could combine the two, it'd be amazing, but he can't. So he's just like in this conundrum. The whole episode is him in this conundrum. And then Niles is like, so which one do you like? He's trying to help him through asking questions. Which one? You know? And then Frasier is still not coming to an answer through even those questions. After Niles hears the qualities of both women, he basically is like, they both seem amazing. I think they could both be really good for you. So it almost doesn't really matter which one you could pick. I think it's going to be a good decision either way. And then he's like, no. I want to be like, you know, there's definitely one that's more for me, but I just need to dig deeper. And then Niles is like, okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to flip a coin for it, and we'll just leave it up to destiny to decide. And then Frasier's kind of reluctant, but Niles is just like, just trust me, let's just go along with it. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. So Niles flips the coin, and he's like, you know, heads it's this lady, tells us this lady. And then he catches the coin. As he's about to reveal the coin, he looks at Frasier. He's about to reveal the coin, and at a certain juncture, he's like, that's it. Which one? And then Frasier looks at his brother in like glee, like, because he rates his brother as a better psychologist. Frasier was not a psychologist, even though he trained in it. He basically has a radio show, whereas Niles is actually, you know, the practitioner with his practice. And he looks at his brother in glee, just like, wow. I think it's clear. I think he chooses clear. Indian. I can't remember which one, but he probably chooses clear. And in that moment, Frasier was able to bring up the deep, repressed feeling, emotion that he had for Claire, which was stronger than he had for the other lady. And so the first revolutionary idea about divination is it's less so about telling the future and more about tapping into your subconscious mind. So we understand that your conscious mind is at best 10%. At best 10% of your power, your subconscious mind 90. And so by always allowing your conscious mind to be in the driving seat, which is what control does. So the part of the brain that wants to control is also the part of the brain that wants clarity, is also the part of the brain that needs to know everything. So that is your conscious mind. And I always say that you will never tap into your true spiritual self by only following the logic, by only linear thinking. And in order to break free from linear thinking, you need to use and tap into other parts of the brain, i.e. your subconscious, the right side of your brain. And so divination, once you trust it, bypasses logic. And then divination as a tool becomes a projection prompt, where it doesn't predict your fate, it reflects your mind back to you. Another thing about this channel, and where I am in my latest thinking after 20 years of study, and 5 years of hard study into quantum physics, metaphysics, philosophy, theories of everything, and fundamental physics, just the nature of reality, what I would really actually say fundamental metaphysics, is that when you're looking into theories of everything, the main school of thought is that we live in a block universe. So in a block universe, the future is already set in stone. And so even 10 years ago, I remember literally, maybe not 10 years ago, maybe about 7 years ago, I remember for about 6 months in a row, my whole mind was on predestination versus free will. And this may seem like a tangent, but again, the way you see the world will dictate everything. All we have is perception. Part sun, we are partial suns. We have partial light. Person, partial light. And so how you see the world will dictate the use of divination. And I'm saying that most people who are into divination believe in predestination. This is just my observation, experientially, anecdotally, not done surveys. I.e., everything is set in stone. There is next to no free will. Little to next to no free will. Different people have varying degrees, but essentially you're on a track, you're on a timeline, and you are just here to play out that role, play out that timeline. That puppet's on a string. And I'm not sure why that always made me uncomfortable. Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious who wants to be controlled. So clearly, you can call this some form of bias adding into me looking into this and not agreeing with predestination, especially where I am today. So I'm going to drop a video next week or within the next 2 weeks where I break down my theory of everything, because I really need to do it in like an hour or 2 hours, because it's layers. It's quite deep. Something I've been studying for years, and I just want to share my perspective. But the spoiler alert is that this universe is participatory, and that the only thing that truly exists is the now, and that the future and the past are not set in stone, even the past. So we get into something called retrocausality, where the future is dictating the past. And if you believe in a symmetrical universe, you would say that the future is dictating the past just as much as the past is predicting or setting the potential for the future, i.e. the now. And so in my theory of everything, the universe is probabilistic. Anything except the now is probabilistic. And that your willpower, your focused attention, or that skill, that cultivation of the spirit, one of the practices that I would advocate for any person on the spiritual path is the development of will, attention, concentration, and awareness. As that will is essentially the seat of your power, or at least the channel of your power. And so what I'm essentially saying is that this, even if you want to call it a matrix or a simulation, again, I don't fully buy into that. But even if you did want to use those terms, we understand that this world is definitely has some form of illusion. There's some form of filter, i.e. perception, being really all that we have. And so in this reality, what really goes on, in my opinion, take that for what it is more of a predictive programming. So divination becomes a predictive programming tool, as opposed to a tool that reveals something that was set in stone. And so to drive the point home, in the Matrix, for example, Neo meets the Oracle, and there's a particular point where Neo knocks over a glass, and the Oracle's like, watch that glass. Neo then knocks over the glass, and then the Oracle's like, well, the real mind, and then the Oracle's like, the real thing that's going to mess up your mind is if I didn't give you the warning, would you have knocked that glass over? And my sense, and the sense within my theory, is that you cast your own spells and you curse yourself in real time, which then affects the future outcomes. And so, yes, I do believe in free will. So a lot of my ruminations, a lot of my thinking is, well, if divination works, because I've seen it work countless times, like countless times. So if divination does work, how does divination work in a reality where the future is not set in stone? Me going down this train of thought has led me to where this video is one of my most important videos that I'll do, because the way that I do readings is now completely almost like a 180 flip on how I was doing readings when I first got into it. And most importantly, what my clients tell me is that I'm able to transform their lives, or help facilitate that, show them a way, show them a gate in a way that they've not been able to get from other diviners. And I'm talking about legendary diviners who are accurate beyond my imagination and beyond my level. And so one of the kind of controversial statements that underpins this scientist is a very pragmatic philosophy, where even though know thyself remains paramount, and truth, the proximity, the closeness, the clarity in which we can know ourselves is also juxtaposed with one of my strongest beliefs, which is use over truth. Which is, if it's not useful, if the truth isn't useful from a spiritual perspective, then I'm going to explore practices which can be used, essentially. Just by me doing that one, by me having that one axiom, by me having that one affirmation, it allows me to avoid mental masturbation as someone that's naturally a truth seeker. So you could say that I'm autodidactic in my approach to learning, and I don't have a psychology degree, but again, it's one of those areas that I go in pretty hard on. And the reason is because the universe is mental, and I understand what the original meaning of psychology is, i.e., development and cultivation of the soul and mind. And obviously, that is the mind at large, not the brain. So the latest ideas around psychology, the atheistic, Cartesian ideas, materialistic ideas around psychology, is that it just is there to study behavior, and then also the mind. And when they say the mind, they mean the brain, because everything, the brain is the be all and end all for an atheist. And so what I'm going to do in this part of the video is just explain divination's use from a psychological perspective, a strengthening of the mind perspective, which is where I truly believe divination comes into its own, as opposed to just a tool for telling the future. And so the first one that I hinted on is within psychoanalysis, which is what Carl Jung and especially Sigmund Freud pioneered, is projection. So projection is this whole coin toss idea of this whole idea of unconscious feelings or desires arising from external symbols. So projection is really good for anyone that understands the holographic universe, because a projection would just be a fractal of the universe splitting itself. So in my philosophy, again, always have to speak about my philosophy. So in my philosophy, all is self and self is all is one and one is all. And so when I'm teaching divination, I teach you that every single one of these symbols is a reflection of you. Each one of these symbols is a potential gateway into transformation, because the whole idea behind a symbol is to interpret its meaning. A symbol has no value unless you attach it meaning. It would be then meaningless. It would be pointless. And so when we interpret a tarot card or an astrological chart, we're often projecting our emotions, our subconscious, our biases onto these symbols. And that's a good thing, because it allows us to then become an observer, have that observer-absorber relationship, create that separation, create that distance that allows us to see ourselves. That seeing ourselves then leads to a second out of 5 psychological benefits of divination, which is reflective functioning. So in the school of something called attachment theory, a reflective function allows us to see the universe as a mirror. So again, all words are symbols. So when I'm explaining projection and fractals and a hologram, that would be similar, not the same, but similar to a mirror. So one of my other ways of looking at the universe is that the universe is a mirror and all is self. So us using these symbols as energy which points back to us allows us to internalize that energy that we were projecting out, that we may have been unaware of. And so we can start to see the patterns and our actions in a new light. The third psychological benefit of divination is exposure therapy. This is a deep one. So in clinical psychology, if they feel a client is ready, this is clear, like they would need to do an assessment first. But once they're happy that their client is ready, they would perform something called exposure therapy, which is similar to a shock and awe exercise where it's similar to a homeopathic remedy or a vaccine, where they put the poison, a small fraction of the poison, into the system to then act as an antibody. And so with exposure therapy, it's encouraging you to face your fears. And so divination can, depending on the divination tools that you're using, can act as a symbolic exposure therapy. I love looking at my clients' faces when the devil card is revealed to them in their chart. Or when we start speaking about Lilith. Or when we start speaking about Lilith in astrology. And so by identifying these uncomfortable areas, we can help clients start to confront these uncertainties, these chaos energies through a safe and symbolic work. So we can help clients confront uncomfortable uncertainties through a safe symbolic framework. And in the final psychological benefit in a universe that is mental is imaginal exposure, which is part of trauma-focused therapy. And in trauma therapy, this particular imaginal exercise is less extreme, although for people that have got a very strong visual cortex, it could be just as extreme. You know, think of a dream. We would play out scenarios and hypotheses of the potential of your fates playing out. So if this fate did play out, how would you react? So instead of us focusing on the event and just getting peace because we understand the events that are going to arise, we use these events as tools. We use these events as teaching tools to allow for transformation to take place. So what would this potential event do for you? What is the worst case scenario? What is it about this event that you fear, that you feel like you need clarity on? Why do you need clarity on? What would happen if you didn't get an answer on this before the event happened? Again, there must be more to life than just to know thyself. Again, there must be more than life to just know thy event. Yes, the next layer would be, yes, the deeper layer is to know thyself. And then with any luck, be thyself. And so what we want to do is we want to integrate divination into a broader framework. So in this next section of the video, we're going to explore how you can use divination as a broader part of your daily practice, using divination as a mirror instead of an 8-ball. And so instead of bringing the question, will we stay together, we reframe the distribution of the energy and the attention into a developmental practice. And so then the question would become something like, what energy am I bringing to this relationship? How am I using divination to tease out the energies that may be subliminally hidden, that may be deep within my subconscious? How do I bring those things to surface through using divination and oracle tools to allow me to understand my contribution into the relationship? So second, is this job good for me? Will I get this job? Instead, how can I use divination to show me the certain gates, show me the certain energies at play, the dispositions at play that allow me to understand my skills for mastery and the mindset that's going to cultivate success within my particular frame? I mean, the question that you would ask yourself before going to any reader, me included, is, am I ignoring a part of myself that is unwilling to grow through this uncertainty? These shifts in perspective, these different ways of framing the question, is what turns you from a worrying control freak, a ball of anxiety, into someone that's on the path to mastery and growth. And so this video is again, it's just a call to action for you to just have that clarity and to decide which narrative fits you best. Which archetype are you falling into? Which aspect of self are you tapping into? What is the aspect of self you're feeding in this knowing of information? Because a wise man knows that he will never know it all. So what are we truly seeking? This is the question. And some way into this video, I still feel like I'm holding back from what my biggest bugbear was, because from one aspect, a lot of the stories that led me into divination was just a personal curiosity to understand that there must be something deeper. But really, the most disturbing issue I've found within people who practice divination, and again, I'd probably say the majority, are people that are stuck in a religious mindset. So again, this is where my biases make sense in terms of me being clear with how I see the world. When I say biases, it's just my perspective. Like, all perspectives are biased. And so this comes down to your relationship with the divine. The word and the theme of this video is divination. And so in divination, you're exploring your relationship with the divine. And how you use divination as a tool is going to be fully dependent on how you see your relationship with the divine. I maybe naively like to think, because spirituality is a broad church, just like a church is a broad church, over 40 denominations easily. And if I was to, do a dividing line between what I see as a religious person and a spiritual person, based on, again, my perspective, is that a religious person seeks for truths and answers outside of themselves. Fundamentally, they see God and themselves as something separate. The creator created a son, and then that son sacrificed himself so that the peons, and so in that narrative there is a clear master and slave relationship. You could obviously, in a kind of way, say father-son relationship. You would be nothing without this external being that just so happened, through the grace of its kindness and love, allowed you to be saved. This is what I would call the classic religious, especially, and to my mind, a spiritual person sees themselves at least as a co-creation, understand that God is within, and that there is no need to seek external sources, tap into their divine nature, their divine aspects, and their quote unquote truest self. And so if we run with that narrative, the problem I have with divination becomes stark in my mind. And that is, I see too many people that I would say fall into the dogmatic religious trap of another mechanism of control, where in, for example, astrology, they call it the rulers. So you are ruled by the rulers because these planetary energies are bigger than you. They are more important than you. They have more influence over you than you. And so again, it goes back to this whole idea of the puppets on a string. You are just a actor. You are a predestined food for the gods, soul trap theory, matrix theory, these kind of similar things, where basically your power as a sovereign soul is lessened to the point of slavery, or having minimal will that allows you to determine your outcomes. And the main point that I press upon all of my clients, the main point that I press with anyone that's ever listened to any of my videos and then come to me with a reading, because, you know, they will see certain themes where I'm consistent in certain themes, is that we're not trying to understand how we can be controlled by astrology, but we're trying to understand how we can transcend astrology. So we have the 12 signs. How do we become the 13? You know, I'm happy to speak about our Christ consciousness as a centering energy that, regardless of the gate, all gates lead to home. All gates lead to soul. All gates lead to soul. All gates lead to Rome. All gates lead to home. The home is your soul. And so when I speak and when I do readings and when I'm speaking about divination and I'm trying to break down this quite a revolution, that's why I need to do this video, because when I say this, it takes people a while to kind of settle with this idea, because it's quite it's a 180, quite honestly, from the norm. Is that we have something called disposition, or what I call disposition, i.e. your position. So I'm saying that when you're born, there's a snapshot, your name, your name, your date of birth, your name, your date of birth. So I'm saying that when you're born, there's a snapshot, there's an entry point, there's a portal that's been opened, a gate, and that these are true. Like these are true. The place where you were born is important. The name that you have has importance. I'm gonna drop a mind-blowing video on the importance of a name, like something I've never heard anyone speak about. I think one of the best ways to view the universe is as a metaphor. Everything is a symbol. The only thing we can truly know is ourselves. That's why it says focus on thyself, don't focus on the world. The Buddhist teaching would say 90% of your attention should be focused on the inner, 10% on the outer. One of my favorite books says 98%, but you know, that's extreme for most. Regardless, when we're viewing this snapshot, this birth chart, for example, it's best to look at it as a frame, an entry point, a portal, a gate. So through that gate, there is a perspective. There is an energy signature. There is a signature, a sign of nature. And these signs of nature are trying to give you hints and clues as to who you are, who you could be, where you're going, etc. But because the only thing that is real is the now, the only thing that is true is the now, you have to understand the impermanence of this all. You have to understand the impermanence of so much of this so-called projected reality. The projected reality that understands that the only constant in the universe is change. And so the key to transformation is fluidity. Flow like water. That's Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, by the way. And so ultimately, what it comes down to is, at one of its most fundamental and important reasons, is that divination becomes a tool to understand the difference between self and not self. And the fluidity of your personality and the allness of self means that you have the potential to become anything. And essentially, the universe is what you make it. So divination becomes just a way for us to understand the science of nature, so that we can work with rhythms and patterns that are easy to us, whilst also understanding the testing nature of life. and that the testing nature of life that embraces chaos, embraces uncertainty, becomes our greatest superpower. And so you've got an option where, for example, in something like human design, for example, you know, there's a divination system called human design. It's kind of based off of I Ching and astrology, or we could even just take the I Ching basically. So you've got 46, so you've got 64 codes in the I Ching, just like on a chessboard, and we can be like, okay, cool. Here's your 10 gates. They call them gates. That's why I love. That's why I love the I Ching or Gene Keys human design. You know, they call them gates. One of the classic names for them is gates. And so you could be like, well, I am these 10 gates, and the only thing that I could be is these 10 gates, and I'm gonna live my life in a very predictive way that only follows this track, these trains of thoughts. These 10 gates become my life, and I ignore everything else around these other 44 gates. So that would be one way to approach it. Another way to approach it is that I am all these gates. And so I'm going to work with all of these gates in a much more creative and fluid way, whilst not ignoring the 10 gates that seem to be the most prominent themes, the reoccurring themes, i.e., events that are playing out. But I, as a self-determined being, sovereign of free will, is open to the fact that all is self and self is all, not part is self and self is part. That would be me tapping into the not self aspect, or the part son aspect, the person aspect of self. And so in my next video, I'm going to be showing how I've built my own divination system, because I understand how to use these divination tools as toys for creation, toys for imagination, toys for fun, and then also toys for, or tools for transformation. And again, I wouldn't be here today, like, you know, there's almost like a secret part of my life where I know that there's a high chance I wouldn't be sitting here today with some of these insights and these, what I know to be revolutionary to self. I'm just sharing. This is just a video of an outward expression of the revolution that I know to be inside. And I know that I wouldn't be here today doing this kind of video if I had the clarity on how I saw the world now. Because I may have just went with, well, divination isn't important because it's not about knowing the future, and left it at that. But something within me that I didn't know, that I was completely uncertain about, wanted me to explore further. I always say, let curiosity be the driving force in the journey to know thyself. And through the grace of perseverance amidst the chaos, and then more importantly, help share it with other people. And just as important, help share with other people. I always knew I was going to do this video. Like, this video is a seminal piece of work at this stage of the game. And quite honestly, I need to get this video out. Like, this is a really important video for me to get out, because if I do a reading with you, I need to explain my philosophy and my principles. Otherwise, I don't want you to rob you. I don't want to shortchange you, basically. So I want you to come to me with a reading with your eyes fully open. Someone booked me for a reading last week, or a couple of weeks ago now, and one of my first questions is, have you had a reading before? She says yes. She's had about 3 readings this year, maybe 3 to 4 readings this year. She mentions a few names, and 2 of them I've heard of. Now, 2 of them, these are people that I would respect as like the pinnacle, like they're legends. Like, both been doing readings for maybe over 30 years, maybe even 40. I don't even know. Like, you know, grey hairs, elders of the community. They're people that blow my mind. Like when they give readings or when they share their forecasts around the year or something like that, it just blows my mind like how accurate they are. Because, you know, we reflect on them a year, you know, they bring it back a year later and there's like, oh wow, that reading that you did where you said that this thing was going to happen, it happened. That's crazy. They bring them back, you know, they're valued on their accuracy. And this one guy in particular, she gets a reading from this one guy, and she's like, it's just crazy. Like, I've never had a car crash before. And he's like, have you had a car crash? Or I think, I can't remember how she phrases it, but it's something like, have you had a car crash recently? And she gets a car crash that next 2 days. It blows her mind. She's never had a car crash before, thinks she's a safe driver. She's a safe driver. And so by the time I get, I don't know, 20 minutes into the reading, or sometime into the reading, she's like, she basically is just sharing how incredible my reading is. And the thing that she specifically pointed to was how useful my reading was. This is the key, is how useful it was. Because what she felt, that even though she knew, like, they told her things that, you know, no one could ever know, and things happened that was just like, you know, 1 in a million kind of stuff, is that as a person, she didn't really grow from it. When she looks back at how much she grew, she pointed to other things that helped her grow. And with my reading, even though I was doing a reading where I was literally telling her about certain things and she didn't share the whole reading with me, but some of the things that I was revealing in the reading were some things that this other person had shared in his insights. So she was, you know, sharing how I was doing something similar. You know, I'm not going to say I was doing it to that level. It's not really my aim or my intention is to show you how accurate I am. But she was talking about how she could feel that what I had taught her was more transformational than anything that she's ever seen in from any of her readings previously. And so, like I said, everyone is going to have their own perspective on everything. So that's not for me to say like, oh, I'm the best reader on the planet. It's for me to understand that one of my biggest issues with astrology readings is that when I was going through my interview phase and I'm building the app and I'm going on and I'm just like speaking to people that have had readings, I'm like, okay, cool. So what happened at the end? What was the end result? What did you apply from that? Often, well, most people didn't understand their readings. That was just the main thing. But then the second thing was that there wasn't really a practical application to it. And it makes sense when you understand that that wasn't really the intention in the first place, even though that's maybe potentially what that person went in there for. Or sometimes, again, you get what you want, not what you need. And so it's just about you distinguishing what is it you truly need. And so now we move on to the last section of the video, where we share with you the 4 pillars and benefits of divination. Benefit number 1, self-mastery. If it ain't about transformation, I'm not interested. 2025, that's it. Like, we're going quite extreme with it. If it ain't about transformation, I'm just not interested. If it ain't about tapping into my being, I'm not interested. If it ain't about knowing thyself, I'm not interested. Self-mastery, now we're talking. And so anything that allows me to do that, that's the tool that I'm going to look out for. The tool that allows me to do that the furthest, that's the tool that I'm going to seek out the most. And so for me, when I'm speaking about self-mastery, I see sovereignty as the highest form of self-mastery. And to a sovereign mind, creating, or at the very least co-creating your own reality, understanding that you are one with your environment, becomes the ultimate objective, becomes the ultimate marker of success. What is my ability to mold the environment around me? This alchemical mindset that transforms lead into gold spiritually. that would then have its fruits also physically. And so one way in which you can do this is leading me on to my second point, which is, in this reality, all we have is symbols. And so the most important thing is your ability to become a mean machine, a meaning maker, your ability to interpret signs and symbols as a call from God, as a communion, as a communication with the Most High, with the divine, whichever preference of name you prefer. And so I've got this far in the video, but essentially the revolution in my mind came when I understood that there wasn't really there's no such thing as a purpose. You would need to check out my first video in the Infinite Design playlist. But I repeat, I think in practically all of the videos because it's such a major theme. Who told you you have a purpose? Question the question is essentially a key part of critical thinking. Is Jesus black and white? Did Jesus exist? Would be a better question. Would be a primer question. And so I'm using divination not as a tool for me to understand my purpose, but as a driver for me to determine meaning and for me to create meaning and create meaning through symbolic language, and my ability to create meaning through symbolic language. And so we go from a what is my purpose, or this is my purpose, to life is what you make it. So you can see hopefully how it's linked in with a sovereign mind that understands that the universe is mental and that we at the very least co-create our reality, a mean machine for the codes that we see. So your ability to infer, your ability to determine what these symbols are, to interpret what these symbols are, becomes the skill to cultivate, the prime skill to cultivate, which taps into a more, what John Vivek would call the meaning crisis, where everybody's searching for purpose, but the purpose is only 5 to 10% of the game into a wider contextual, well, what does it all mean? My life is meaningless, as a nihilistic person would say, or a person still searching for meaning at the very least. And so when you understand that meaning is what you make it, from a sovereign mind perspective, the first level would then be to get a dream book. The second level would be to journal your own meanings of your own symbols. The first level is to buy an oracle deck. The advanced level is to create your own oracle deck, is to understand that you're ruled by these planets and that these planets have an influence over you. The advanced level is to work with these star signs as ingredients for recipes that you choose to cook, that you choose to eat from seeds that you choose to sprout. The last video I just dropped goes into this meaning making ideology on a deep level and gives you also a formula on how to become a meaning maker. It's essentially a manifestation video. But again, if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely enjoy that one because it comes with this angle, with this twist. And so even the way we speak about manifestation comes from a specific light, a specific perspective. So John Vivek talks about a meaning crisis, which I really resonate with. It just rings so true. And so I studied that hard. But really, before I even heard of John Vivek, my own crisis that I was seeing with people that I was helping through my life coaching was really just a pandemic of poor decisions. a pandemic of poor decisions through people not understanding critical thinking, having reasoning, not tapping into their spirit, not understanding what's the difference between an ego and self, and an identity, a persona, a macro realm and a micro realm, and as above realm, and a so below realm, and as within realm, and an as without realm. And so these muddy waters lead to confused, when I really saw the power of the tools that I've built, because again, this divination tool is just one tool of, well, actually, I've not said it. This divination tool is one tool of 40 tools that I've built. It's just the hardest one to build because no one's done it. So I built it first. Eat that frog. But when I was looking at all of my, I think at the time I probably had about 20 tools built. When I was looking at all my 20 tools that I built, I realized that we went way beyond just bringing clarity to the future. And we were actually talking about a tool that aids discernment, a tool that aids decision making, using divination as a tool that cultivates the skill of clear choices, or of making good choices, better decisions. And so sometimes we get into this diseased idea, or this dangerous idea, because again, there is beauty in it. There is beauty in this statement, which is, I'm exactly where I chose to be. But one of the shadows of that kind of energy is that it leads to a certain level of complacency, where you think that every decision is a good decision and that there are no bad decisions. And that in hindsight, you would do exactly the same thing because it would change an aspect of yourself which you've actually come to appreciate. And so I see the beauty in that. That's one of my favorite mantras. I'm exactly where I chose to be. But that statement should ring true as long as it doesn't become a mask to hide poor decision making through cognitive biases, negative biases, negative traits, a lack of shadow work, spiritual bypassing, overly emotional decisions, a lack of cultivation of the soul or the spirit. And so we can always play those future scenarios where we see ourselves making better decisions through our wisdom and through our experience, to a point where we start to understand foresight. So divination becomes a tool to cultivate foresight. It's not a fortune telling tool, it becomes a tool to cultivate foresight. Okay, so if these are the energies at play today, how do I cultivate my energy? How do I evoke the right kind of energy that allows me to thrive in this environment? This would be a key question that we should be asking ourselves, as opposed to the, oh, it's raining, I'm just going to stay at home today. No, my will desires to get somewhere. As a co-creator of my reality, as a sovereign soul where the creator works through me, I realize that I am more powerful than these energies at play. This will that becomes undeterred in direction and focus. Ideally, getting to the highest level in my mind, where you're able to grow from adversity. You get a net gain regardless of the situation. And so that discernment then taps into the wisdom. That discernment taps into the skill to extract the most from any event. That's a completely different lens to, I'm finally going to get peace because this event has happened in a way which I like. So I advocate we're mentally safe to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Hit that like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. So the final point, the final benefit is the cultivation of what I believe to be obviously one of your greatest superpowers. So how I would use divination as a tool to cultivate discernment would be, well, there's a couple of ways actually. But one of the ways is you do focus back on accuracy. It's just that now you're coming at it with a different angle and you're using discernment as a way to determine between truth and illusion. So you're using divination as a way for you to determine truth, your ability to identify the truth, not because you need to know the truth to subdue anxiety and fear of the unknown, but as a tool to understand the difference between, as I said, self and not self. How to determine the understanding of whether something is progressing you or whether something is holding you back. So when I'm saying that, so in my particular case, divination never doesn't it's never not worked. And I remember before I had this whole 180 switch around how I see divination, I was like, oh, it's because I'm getting more accurate. My thought was, oh, I'm getting more accurate. And so the accuracy or the energy that I'm putting into it is basically affecting its potency. So it means it's working because I'm pulling out certain things and then those things happen. And then the more I pull out those things and the more they happen, the better I'm becoming as a diviner. And as I said, what subconsciously was teasing itself out was that it wasn't necessarily the accuracy, it was my ability to collapse the wave. It was my ability to bring about the scenarios that I was seeing playing out in the Oracle deck by using the last skill that we'll go to. So these kind of skills blend into one another. Like self-mastery blends into meaning making, then blends into discernment, then blends into the last one, which is intuition. And so tapping into your inner wisdom, I'd say they're all important, but is the fundamental aspect. You will never get transformation purely just through logic and rationale, because a wise man knows that he'll never know it all. And so at some point there becomes a gap. And that gap, that vacuum is where the magic happens. That latent space is where the magic happens. And so when it's saying mind the gap, the universe is mental, mind the gap. Sorry, this is for the people that are in the UK, the underground. It says mind the gap, basically, between the distance between the train and the train tracks. And so that mind the gap becomes that exploratory gateway into the unknown. And this exploratory gateway is best traveled using the power of intuition. And so in divination, you've got three main types: interpretive, or you could say like logical, which would be like your astrology, numerology. And then the one that allows you to tap into your intuition the most, could easily be said, is intuitive divination, which uses symbolic, again, meaning making references, symbolic literacy through things like oracle decks, tarot cards, dream interpretations. Where, as I said, the most advanced level would be for you to create your own dictionary of symbols. So yes, water means this to this person, but this water means something different to me because I almost died when I was younger. I almost drowned. This didn't happen, I'm just saying. And so water takes on a completely different meaning for me. So these books become irrelevant because I know myself so much through my symbol literacy. And I've also developed an intuition and an instinct. And then I understand synchronicity and divine timing. So these are the two skills that I like, would be complementary pillars. I understand synchronicity to the point where God can only speak to me through symbols. And it's my ability to tap into the feelings, the resonance of that energy, of that energetic signature symbol, that will determine the clarity of the signal, that will determine the clarity of the communication. And so without intuition, none of that happens, because you're going to be falling on narratives that are too linear and are not relevant enough to your particular life. And so I wanted to make sure that when I was building my system, that I built it in a way which was fluid. So I talk about the story of like human design versus gene keys, and how the inventor, so you have I Ching, which is a divination system. That's the oldest one, the oldest divination systems that we know of. Some people say it's the oldest, over 3,000 years old. Then and this is a Chinese system, and then you get the Western system as a Western interpretation called human design, which comes out in like 1980s. And then you get the gene keys, which is maybe like a decade old now. And the person who studied under the person who designed the human design felt like felt like human design was too rigid, and that they wanted a system that was more freer, that was more looser. And so I'm learning about this as I'm building up my divination system. And I was like, yeah, that really resonates with me. As someone that intuitively had this create your own reality, like I always say, my limited company is called I Create My Story. I set this up 4 years ago. And so as I started so I set this up 4 years ago as I started building this app. And there'll be a time where I actually do videos where I show my system. Like, I don't just talk about divination from this kind of top-down perspective, which this video clearly is a theoretical video. But I'm going to be doing videos where I either show you in real time, or I show you the results of the divination, the after effects of it through videos, decoding stuff. And the beauty of the system wasn't even in the end result of like what I've produced. It was actually the journey. And so what basically happened is I built my own oracle system. So within this divination system, there's an oracle system. And this was an idea from my imagination. Like, I'm obviously not the first one to build my own oracle deck. How did they obviously get invented? Obviously people build them, so people have this idea. The whole point about my system is that I changed it 5 times throughout its evolution. I changed the way in which I was doing the divination 5 times. Sometimes I was changing the order. Sometimes I changed how I was revealing the pool. Let's say like how I was revealing the spread. Sometimes I even changed the spread. But more importantly, I changed the way how I was doing the actual revelation of the card, let's just say. And every single time, no matter which way I changed it, it would work. Now, someone that had more of a tighter, controlling narrative would have been like, oh wow, this thing that I've created this first time is beautiful, and that if I change it, it's not going to work, or there's a danger it doesn't work, because how can you improve on perfection? Because it works. Like, use over truth, it works. And it was revelatory in showing me that it was never the divination system that was important. What was key was the energy that I was putting into it. What was key was the skill of extraction that I was able to receive from it. It's like there's a coal and there's gold in this coal. Your ability to extract the diamonds is going to determine how much you get paid. And so it never became about the coal itself or even the gold itself. It became the skill, the cultivation. This is what we're saying. It's never the tool, it is always the man. And so when we're coming full circle, when we're speaking about divination, my main problem with divination is people using it as a crutch, is because they're not really developing any skills that become useful beyond the tool itself. So this skill only comes online when I use the tool, or the tool is what activates this skill or this ability. And I'm like, these skills that I've explained, intuition, discernment, meaning making, and self-mastery, are transferable. I would say transferable to a soul that is infinite and to a mind that is universal. All of these skills would be needed and be used in the astral plane, for example, would become more useful, would be more needed. So these transferable skills become skills to be used in the infinite game for infinite gain. And so, quite honestly, you just have to decide, as I said again, as we're closing up this video, what game are you playing? So as an elder, so as an elder, so as an elder that I respected a lot, he had this one saying that would never leave me, which is, it wasn't even a saying, it was just something he used to say, which is, the only thing I fear is getting to the end of life and realizing I played the wrong game. And so my question to you in this video is, what kind of game are you playing? Have you discerned through your wisdom, through your intuition, through your knowing of thyself, then knowing God, source, that you're playing the right game? What is the determining factor? Do you realize the distinct choice and difference between an infinite game and a finite game? And so I'd highly, highly recommend watching my free masterclass plus workbook that I used to charge a whole heap of money for, and I'm now giving away for free, mainly because I want people to just be on a level. Like, this information is needed from my perspective. I feel like there's a perspective that's just just doesn't seem to be out there, or definitely in a minority. And I think it's about time that it gets brought to light, because I play the game of transformation. I play an infinite game, one of transformation and self-mastery, of know thyself. And anything that ain't about that, as I said, I'm not interested. So if you're one of those people that are inclined to that way, inclined to that behavior, that archetype, then I'd highly recommend subscribing to this video, because I'm only bringing that energy. I don't sugarcoat anything. And my next video will be a forecasting video, but the way in which I'm about to do forecasting is also going to be different. And these points of difference are not for me to show uniqueness from an egoic or even a marketing standout way. It's because I understand how to tap into my creator space. I understand what the purpose and point of creation is. And so all I am is just being the universe is just a mirror. And so I built 40 divination tools, or 40 divination tools have been created. There is only creation. And we just want to have fun with our tools. We're just going to have some fun with the tools that will facilitate the growth of transformation in an enjoyable, but in a real deep way. And so if that's a journey that you're interested in seeing me explore and share, then like, subscribe, comment on the video. You know, the more the merrier in terms of people that watch this. And so with that said, peace and love to all, and we're out till next time.